Want to start off with the election recap. Your thoughts. I mentioned a moment ago what I described as a mandate. It was an overwhelming victory on your behalf. But what is your takeaway from the election, both for yourself, for the state, and then I would go so far as the country?
Well, I'm blessed for myself. I'm surrounded by great team members and great staff who do the blocking and tackling every day of taking care of constituent work. And every day is working on constituent issues, which, in my opinion, if you make that first and foremost, the election part takes care of itself. As far as the country goes, Lockwood, I see this, you can describe mandate in different forms. I think I see this really as a rejection of the progressive leftist policies to divide us, put us all in silos, go way, way, way out there on redefining what social norms are. Good Lord, who in their right mind thinks that a man who believes they're a woman should be competing against another woman in any sport? It's just absolutely bizarro, if you ask me. And I think this is what the country said. What do they care about? They don't care about all this other extraneous nonsense. They care about how much they have to pay for gas in the grocery store. Can they afford to buy a new home? Are they safe and secure? Are they, pushing more defunding the police, which is a policy that all Democrats are now running from, except a few who still defend that absurd policy. So I think it's an absolute rejection of the direction that the Biden-Harris leftist progressives wanted to push our country. And President Trump, gave us a great vision of how we put the nation back on track. I was over at Arlington Cemetery a little while ago. I was honored to do a wreath-laying ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And driving back, we saw a Subaru with we're not going back sticker. Thank God we're not going back to the last 4 years. We're moving forward. And so I think that's what the American people said. Good Lord, Trump got 76 million votes. I think it was amazing, and we're very, very excited.
Congressman, you have not been shy about your observations about several things. I'll talk about the Biden administration here in a moment, but first and foremost, the issue associated with the cabinet. Of course, there are 4 arguably candidates that are being nominated for cabinet position. I say nominated, being identified for cabinet position. Former Congressman Gates, who of course stepped down just before the announcement of his House Ethics Review, and then former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. But I'm curious about a real quick rundown of your observations related to, I think, the 4 most controversial members. That would be Congressman Gates, Pete Hegseth, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and Tulsi Gabbard. Your observations on those 4, and if you'd like to single out any, that would be fine.
Sure. No president or president-elect is going to come and nominate people. 100% of their people are not going to have a little bit of controversy surrounding them or questions. But this time, there's some folks, and usually it's by the other party, but this time there's some folks, notably Matt Gaetz, where even Republicans are having some heartache. The first and foremost thing is that I want President Trump to have people around him whom he trusts, who are going to help fulfill his vision and push things forward. If there are prolonged debates in the nomination process, it doesn't help President Trump at all. We need fighters. We need good disruptors. We don't need people who disrupt for the sake of disruption. I think there are some good choices that we have moving forward. I think there's some ones that are going to cause a lot more consternation in the Senate for confirmation.
Well, let's talk about Pete Hegseth real quickly, because that does influence your particular market because of his designation as Secretary of Defense. And, of course, you have a lot of DOD facilities within your district. Any concerns there?
Lockwood, I'm still learning about him. Okay. He's not a name I knew a lot about. I know there are some folks within the military community that have their concerns. Again, what's happened over the last 4 years to our military is unbelievable. The wokeism. My gosh, at the Naval Academy, or maybe it was West Point. A couple weeks ago, one of a recent parent was telling me that their son that somebody made him go to a lecture that they talked about how great transgenderism was and that they needed to reject their faith in Christianity, Judaism, or whatever, and throw those things off on a slide and say, no, we're going to have faith in within. So this is the absolute corruption, corrosion, and destruction of the American moral fiber that are seeing now in our academies. And if this is just a symptom, if this is just an example of what's going on throughout our military, this nonsense needs to be thrown out. Whether he's the right one, I can't really say at this point in time. We need somebody who has vision, who understands the military, understands the mission that is facing us in a very, very volatile world.
And then I want to touch on one other that you have, I think, had contact with, and that's Tulsi Gabbard. She served up until 2021, so I'm thinking your paths did cross. Your observations on her?
Lockwood, I never met her. I've never met her. And that was an interesting choice because, she is a Democrat, but I think President Trump has shown that he's willing to go across lines. People don't necessarily have to have subject matter expertise in the cabinet post they're positioned, they're nominated to. And this happens, in many different forms of leadership. What they have to do is have the leadership abilities to put good, smart subject matter experts around them so that they can be well-versed, well-advised, and making good decisions. I think the hardest one, truth be told, and reality is reality, is the Attorney General pick. There are a lot of questions. I mean, he resigned from Congress 2 days before the
Ethics Committee
ethics report was going to come out. And so I think a lot of folks have questions about that.
Matt Gaetz, along with Marjorie Taylor Greene, were adamant opponents to Speaker Johnson. President Trump, of course, has shown his support for Speaker Johnson. You yourself have spoken very much in favor of Speaker Johnson. Let's talk about that in relationship to his departure. Does this indicate to you that and the Speaker, of course, has continued at least until January. What's your observation about his future, and how important is that, both for the current activities within the House, but also the future?
I think Mike Johnson will be elected Speaker. I put out something on X the other day that I didn't want us to have disruptors for the sake of disruption.
Right.
And I meant that. We got bogged down in the last cycle. It was a personal vendetta of Gaetz against McCarthy. It had nothing to do with politics. It had everything to do with a personal vendetta. And we don't need that nonsense. We're elected by individuals to represent them and carry the business on of the country, not of personal likes or dislikes or anything. I feel very good that Speaker Johnson will be reelected in that position, and God bless him. I wouldn't want that job. We're going to have some issues, but I just wish people would, I will tell you, and I've said this many times, the fact we have 24/7-hour news cycles, right. We have, Instagram, we have Twitter, we have all these things that I think are just oftentimes become the object, become the goal, rather than just a medium for members in the Congress. I think I'd love to get rid of all that stuff, but it's here to stay. So,
Congressman, I mentioned a moment ago the future of the House, and of course, we're looking at a lame duck session right now. I do want to touch on the item of FEMA, if we can, just briefly. But first and foremost, what should we expect over the next few weeks before the Christmas break and the capacity as the lame duck session comes to a close? And I've also got to bring up the topic of President Biden's decision yesterday related to missiles in Ukraine.
I think the two things we have to do are budgetary concerns for overall government spending, and then obviously disaster relief. We need to do something for Western North Carolina and for Florida. So, the fact that otherwise some are in the lame duck because they didn't get reelected, some are not coming back because they chose to retire. So it's a little bit of a lull, but I imagine in the last couple of weeks it'll be fast and furious.
We will continue, I am assuming, the omnibus bill, the extension for the budget?
Yeah, I think we're going to end up that or a CR, one or the other. Okay. CR to a time in maybe March or something so that President Trump can get his group in and we really start tackling the debt issues. And look, I am tickled pink about the fact that he's brought in Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk to come in and look at efficiency in government. I think it is fabulous. And we have a lot of longtime bureaucrats that are running scared around here.
They are there's a lot of discomfort in Washington, D.C., based on what I've been able to read and see. Congressman, the other aspect of this related to a lame duck session, and that, of course, is the announcement yesterday from the president that he would expand the use of long-range missiles by Ukraine to be utilized in Russia. Let me just acknowledge at the outset, you and I at least have heard in the past our conversations, we both agree. We think that Ukraine is an important issue for this country. What your thoughts about the potential of the expansion of that war?
I think if you look at what the issue is, that Vladimir Putin is an evil person. He is the Stalin reborn. He is partly Hitler reborn. And it is time, I think, to give him some of his own medicine. Am I happy about this, that we now are giving them authority to strike into Russia? I think it does open some doors. But, as Mike Turner, who's the head of intelligence here, has said, he's been calling on Biden to do it for quite a while. So at some point, you have to push back on the bear. We at the original, before Ukraine was ever invaded, we had a chance to fully arm Ukraine and get them ready, which may have given Putin second thought. But the Biden administration, Secretary Blinken, were too cowardly, really, to stand up. So, I think this pushes Putin back on his heels and gets the Russian people more engaged in knowing that this is going to come on their homeland. So I don't like it. It could escalate things, but I think President Trump will be able to come in and actually negotiate, hopefully, a good peace.
In your capacity, of course, with House Ways and Means, and we'll wrap it up with this final question, your situation, and of course I was intrigued by the recent presentation you gave on EVs and the EV mandate and the fact that you want to push back on that. But I want to touch one last item from a particularly local. We started briefly with local. Let's wrap it up with local with you, if I could. Congressman Greg Murphy with us this afternoon for a few more moments. Of particular note of concern for you this right now, and again, obviously we're wrapping 2024 up, going into 2025, brand new administration. Your thoughts and expectations for your district, the 3rd Congressional District? Well,
I think the thing that is on everybody's mind, first and foremost, is the economy. I mean, young folks cannot afford to buy a house. Each individual is paying thousands more for daily goods every day now. And so I think the economy is number 1, 2, and 3. The immigration crisis is going to get solved on day one. And I think, though, as we progress in the session, we ought to have good immigration policy. But the economy is number one. The economy is number one.
And, of course, you mentioned a few moments ago FEMA and the issue of recovery, emergency recovery and disaster recovery. Real quickly, do you see that as a new issue for not only for your district, but I would say across the country? Of course, it's highlighted in Florida and North Carolina, but Georgia, Tennessee also got pretty badly damaged. Do you see this as a great, as a growing issue for the for Congress?
Yeah, no. It's a major issue, and the fact that these were, things that were coming out don't give any attention to those with Trump signs, right, as goes. They're as I understand, FEMA is going to be coming before several committees this week. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of nonsense that needs to get cleaned up in the federal government, and I think that's going to be the hallmark and the legacy of the Trump administration in his second term.
All right, and then Congress ends. We'll be closing out for the Christmas season. When will you be going back?
We're going to be. We have our fly-out day later this week, and then there's a week break for Thanksgiving, and then we'll be back first week in December, and we'll be working until we get all the things finished.
Well, again, it's a lame duck Congress. It'll be interesting to see. Hopefully, things will move pretty quickly, but there's no indication of that at this point. Am I correct on that?
No, I think quickly is relative.
Okay.
I think we will. I think once kind of the dust settles after this election, things will move very quickly.